Okay, before we start, I do have a topic I want to talk about tonight, about a particular movement. But before I start, do any of you ladies have any questions um, in regards to movement or your workouts or anything in particular that you have that you'd like me to answer? I usually start off my calls with questions. It's almost like the opposite, but
One question I have.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen. Go
no, I
ahead.
was gonna say, I just like to make sure you guys get your answers, your questions answered. So go ahead. If you're talking, you're muted, Nicole.
Oh, I was gonna let the other participant go first. The only question I had was, it was like maybe a week and a half ago. I went to my WOD, and it was deadlifts and back squats, and I PR'd on the back squats, which was great. But I will say that next day I felt some issues deep down in my soul, if I can say.
Okay.
And it was a little concerning because I had never felt that before. And so, and I was talking to one of the other ladies that I go to the gym. She said, "Oh yeah, you did a lot of straining probably, so that might have put some pressure on some bits down there that you hadn't used before necessarily, or might have you might have pushed too hard." So I wasn't sure, without getting into too much graphic detail, if that's normal, or was I just using the wrong parts, or I don't understand.
It's not normal, but it's probably just an indicator that you were really straining. And it could be that you were not, you were probably, because my guess it's from the back squat, not necessarily the deadlift. So as you're coming out of a back squat, there is a lot of pressure in the lower extremities. And it is possible that you were just like overstraining. And so that's just something to be mindful of as you're squatting, and making sure that you're driving from your legs, that you're really bracing is the word that I'm looking for, that you're bracing with your core, and not like, it could have been just a really, really heavy amount of weight for you that you're just not used to. And so you just strained really hard. It's not normal. Is it common? It's probably not even common. Does it happen? Yes, it does happen. Okay. So it's just something to be mindful of. I would say kind of lay off any PRs, back squatting for a bit, and to make sure that everything is healed. Are you feeling better now, or does it still?
Yeah, I'm feeling better now. When I say PR'd, I don't think I had done back squats before in the gym. So it's kind of like the first time I've done them.
Okay.
And so my weight wasn't really, really heavy. I think I did 65 pounds, which isn't super heavy, but I did probably about, because the WOD was as many reps as you can do at a certain percentage of your max. So
okay,
I think I might have just did too many reps because it was a lighter weight, and that might have been where the strain came into play.
And that could be it too. And I can give you some resources on proper bracing and breathing and making sure that you're engaging the right core muscles, to kind of help protect more vulnerable areas. But then maybe talk with, there's a strength coach or a weightlifting coach there at your gym, talk with them, and without getting like too graphic with them, just saying, "Hey, do you have any tips for proper bracing?" Because that will help you without having to like give them too much information. So
got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions before I jump to our topic for tonight? No?
Nope.
Okay. So topic for tonight I want to talk about is push-ups. More specifically, the difference on how our shoulders move between bench pressing and push-ups. Doing some assessments with some of the ladies in the new 2.0 program, I've noticed certain things with push-ups that's not happening with the shoulders that should be happening with the shoulders. But I want to talk about bench press, even though we may not do bench press a whole lot. Or maybe if you don't do bench press a whole lot, if you ever do, I just wanted to kind of educate a little bit on what we want our shoulders to do in a bench press versus push-up. Now, bench press and push-up are very similar in the fact that we're using our chest muscles. We're also using tricep muscles. So it's just one is laying on your back and you're pushing, and one is that you're face down and you're pushing. They're both pushing movements. But the difference is, and Marlena can't do it because she's driving, but if you are hands-free, you can do this with me. So when we'll start with a push-up. When we do a push-up, and I'm going to try and turn around so you can see my back. But when we do a push-up, a lot of times I see women, when they do push-ups, they just move their arms, right? We just think of a push-up as like just an arm bending back and forth, but there's really more going on. If I turn around, you don't really see much of my shoulder blade do anything, right? My shoulder blade's not really moving. It's just kind of, the only thing that's moving is here to my hand, my wrist, that's it. But that's not what we're wanting. We're actually wanting our shoulder blades to be squeezing together and kind of not rounding, but we're gonna, my words are hard today, people. I'm gonna just spin around and show you, okay? So, if you can see. So, when I come down into my push-up, I almost want to be squeezing my shoulder blades together, okay? And as I push, my back is now flat or a little bit rounded. So my push-up is gonna look more like this here. Okay, does that make sense? So your shoulder blades are protracting and retracting. That's the words I was thinking about. They're protracting and retracting, okay? So you have this kind of like squeezing the shoulder blades together and then not, and then squeezing and then not. That is kind of how your push-up should be. It's a lot of times though, we just do this part. And it puts a lot of strain on the front of our shoulders. But if we can get some back action going, right, it'll help us push that floor away from us when we do a push-up. We want those shoulder blades moving. So if you're not sure, you're like, I don't know if my shoulder blades move in a push-up. This is a great time to record yourself in the gym or at home, wherever. Don't be afraid to prop up your camera and get a good view, or have someone do it for you. Just say, hey, record my shoulder blades, and see if your shoulder blades are moving. And what you can do is you can put your arms out right now and just try it and just squeeze your shoulder blades together and then bring your arms back and then push and your shoulder blades come forward. Okay, so it's shoulder blades back here as we're going like down into our push-up, and then we push away. Now, when we actually do a push-up, you're not going to do it that meticulous. It's going to happen all in one movement. So as you start to bend your elbows, you're going to squeeze your shoulder blades together and allow your body to come down to the floor. And as you push away, you're kind of pushing from, think about pushing from here, and the energy is coming through your hands, right, as you push the floor away. So it's shoulder blades together and then push the floor away. You can practice on a wall too. Come down to the wall, shoulder blades, and then push that wall away from you. Okay, so that's your push-up. We want to make sure that our shoulders are getting involved in that. Now, with a bench press, we don't want our shoulders to be protracting and retracting. Why? Because think about it. You're laying on a bench. Do you think it's really easy to do that squeezing of the shoulder blades and then coming forward? No, because your bench is stopping you. You're not going to be able to get that good squeeze back here because your back is laying on the bench. So what we're going to do is, before we get down and before we get the bar off the rack or dumbbells, we're going to make sure that this is how I do it, is I shrug, I squeeze, and I engage my lats, and I'm locked in this position to where my shoulder blades are kind of pinned to the bench. As my shoulder blades are pinned to the bench, I leave them there, and then I just press with my arms, and that's it. It's a little bit of a shorter movement than a push-up, but my shoulder blades are always in a pinched, it's like they're just pinched. I don't let them come forward. So that's really going to isolate your chest. You might feel even more in the front of your shoulders, and that's okay. That's normal. But that's the difference between a push-up and a bench press. Is push-up, we want that protraction and retraction of the shoulder blades. Bench pressing, we don't want that retraction and protraction of the shoulder blades. We want them in a pinned, retracted position. And then we're just moving. Does that make sense? Does it make sense why one you have protraction and retraction and one is just stationary? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions about that? Or do you notice if you pinch your shoulder blades in a push-up or not? Do you feel like it's mostly just arms and not full upper body pushing?
I've never really noticed before, but I'm going to notice now.
Right?
I do modified push-ups. So I tried the other day to do one on the ground, and I couldn't do it. And maybe it's because I wasn't doing it right. I don't know. But
even if you're modifying, you're still going to have the same movement of protracting your shoulder blades and retracting. But try it and modify it, like even try it up against a wall, and just so that you can get the feeling of your shoulder blades moving with the bending of your elbows in one nice fluid motion. Another thing too, make sure your hand placement is good. A lot of times we do like really wide. Ideally, this is how I teach push-up position, is I have you lay face down on the ground, and then I have you put your hands next to your chest and come out about 1 inch or 2. And then that's your push-up position. Now, us women, we are just built this way. We typically have weaker upper body compared to men. So push-ups they're going to be harder for us. We typically have weaker triceps. So whenever we do push-ups and we do here in this position, we are recruiting more of our triceps. So it's going to be harder for us to really get in that good position and push up. We feel like, oh, we're so weak. You can build yourself into a good push-up position with modify. Gosh, I still modify, and I have been working out for years. I still modify, and I feel like I can get a good range of motion. I feel like I can get good range of motion when I modify. I can get good range of motion on my toes too, but I'll last longer if I modify. I can get more reps in when I modify. So it's okay to modify. It's okay to modify.
Can you talk about elbows?
Yeah.
Because when I do a modified push-up, I do it against my car because I do them in the garage, and so I'm on my toes, but I'm using my car instead of like a bench or whatever. But when I do them on the ground, my elbows want to go out, and I know they're not supposed to go out. Is that right?
Correct.
But it feels easier when they're sticking out.
Yeah. And that is very common for us women as well, because our triceps, we don't work our triceps. We have weaker triceps, and it just means that your triceps need more. So whenever you notice your elbows flare, it's because your triceps can't do the work, and so a different body part is taking over. So I would say try to find like if you're doing it on your car, but you feel like, oh, it's too easy. I'm trying to think if there's anything like around your house that you could do to where you could still lower it to where you feel like your elbows can go straight back and not flare.
There's probably something I can use in my house, a bench or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just triceps need to be strengthened.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Oh, hand positioning. Hand positioning, we talked about an inch out from the chest. A lot of times too, we want to flare our hands out. Okay, ideally we want our fingers pointing forward. You can think about gripping the ground. You can also think about the bend, kind of like, I can't do it because I don't have a stationary thing, but when you engage your arms properly, you kind of have this external rotation, and the bend of your arm is going to face forward. Does that make sense? So right now, my bend of my arm is facing the inside of my body, but if I engage, I can turn it, I can externally rotate it out. That means that my shoulders are engaged. Like everything is nice and tight and engaged. We don't want to be all loosey-goosey when we do our push-ups. We want to be nice and engaged here, externally rotating our shoulders and coming down, being nice and tight and strong. So that's another thing to think about too in your push-up position. You get in a plank position, and you can practice in a plank position without even doing a push-up. Just get in a plank position on your hands and externally rotate your arm, and you will have nice stability in your shoulder. And then from there, ideally, is when we do our push-up. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. I feel like I can demonstrate that, and I can like speak it. So this is good practice of like speaking, since I can't demonstrate it. It's like the benefits of coaching in person, because I could like look at it and then tweak at you as you're doing it versus like trying to explain it to you. But hopefully this makes sense. I'm more of a visual person anyway, so I guess that's why it's easier for me to teach visual stuff versus like just speak it. Does anyone have any questions though when it comes to push-up or bench pressing? Because bench pressing is like a whole nother thing we could go off on, but.
I guess I've got a question about wrist position.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have really weak wrists. And very, very little flexion.
Did you break them at one time or?
Nope.
Nope.
Just really bad.
So I'm guessing you really have to modify, right? Because you can't put a whole lot of pressure. Can you plank? Can you do a plank position?
I haven't done one in a while because my neck was bothering me.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to wrists, a lot of times it's like with anything, over time, the more you do it, the more your body will adapt to those positions, right? But if you're not doing it consistently, then it will never adapt. So it's just going to adapt to what it's used to. So for the wrists, what I recommend is you can do stretching, different stretches, really warm them up before you do push-ups. You could do wrist rolls, either direction. You can take a really light 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pound dumbbell if you have one, and really work the wrists. You can go this direction, you can flip it over and do this direction. Really just trying to warm up the joints in there and get the muscles loosened and the tendons loose before you do push-ups might be helpful. If you've ever done scraping, like my chiropractor does it, but if they get that metal scraper and break up any scar tissue that maybe you fell once and you caught yourself, that really builds up scar tissue in the wrists. You can have them scrape it. It takes time to really get your wrists comfortable in those positions, but if you continue to do warm-ups, stretches, and get your body used to being in those push-up positions, over time it will come. I know it's not a quick fix. There's no quick fix for the wrists. It's just the wrists are awful. It took me a long time to be able to get like in a good front rack position because I had such tight wrists, but over time, doing it over and over, eventually my wrists finally stretched out. So now they're back to where they're pretty tight now. It's a good question though. Good question on the wrist. What else with push-ups? One thing with push-ups that I will say is we have a tendency to try to get our face to the floor. So when we do push-ups, sometimes we get tired, or we think that we're moving our body, but really we're just moving our head. And then we go back up. Do you ever notice, if you ever do that? You just get tired, you think you're moving, but you're really just kind of moving your head. So one thing to think about is your chest, your sternum. Try to get that to the floor. I like to look kind of out ahead. I don't like to look up, and I don't like to look straight down. I just look slightly ahead to where my neck is relaxed. And I just think about my chest, trying to get my chest to the ground, not my nose or my face. Because then it'll keep you from like straining your neck. If you ever feel like your neck is sore the next day, it's probably because you're like straining, trying to get to the floor. And if you can't make it to the floor, then that's okay. But don't try to get your head to the floor. No chicken necking. Trying to think what else, push-ups. I think that was pretty much it with push-ups I wanted to cover. One thing too with push-ups, like I talked about before, no loosey-goosey, no relaxed. You want to be super tight, even if you're on your knees, or even if your hands are elevated. Squeeze your glutes, your quads, your back, everything should be tight. Everything should be tight. The only things that should be moving should be from your shoulders down to your wrists, elbows. That's it. That's the only thing that should be moving. Everything else should be nice and tight. Like I said, the easiest way to kind of like critique yourself is to record yourself. And just start from your wrists to your elbows to your shoulders. Then look at what your legs are doing. Look at what your head's doing. And just try to like pick apart. Not to like criticize yourself, but to learn. Video yourself to learn. That's kind of the best way that you can get educated, is by watching how you move and then tweaking it and seeing how it feels. Any questions on that? I think I kind of covered a lot, but hopefully that was helpful. Julie, did you have any questions? I thought you hopped on earlier with a question, but maybe you didn't.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
But that's good information to know about push-ups, because I didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know either when I first started working out. There's a lot of stuff that we just do, but it's good to know the ins and outs of like why we move a certain way and what's the point of moving a certain way and how we should move a certain way. We're all learning. Is there a position that, or movement, I should say, is there a movement that you do, but you're not 100% sure if you're doing it correctly? Because then this will give me like a topic for next week that we can cover. It could be a type of squatting pattern. It could be a deadlift pattern. It could be overhead pattern. It could be anything, any type of movement that you do in the gym. And you're like, I do this movement, but I don't know if I'm really doing it right. Or I don't feel anything.
So I have one in the strength training workout that you guys have in Fitme, the 8-week one.
Mm-hmm.
There's the arm workout in the first 4 weeks. It's I think day 2 each week is the presses that you press up. And I think I've watched the video. I've watched Christy do it in the video, but it's like I still don't know if I'm doing it right, and I get this like little pain in my shoulder. So that makes me feel like maybe I'm doing something wrong when it's like the push. I think it's like a push press press, strict press, I don't know,
Oh,
and then something
yes.
hold.
Yes.
So those are the ones. I have to use my legs to kind of press up sometimes. So I don't know if I'm doing that wrong, or that's the only one that I feel weird when I do.
So when you say you have
it.
shoulder, is it like a popping, or is it on the top? Is it in the front? Is it on the outside?
Only one arm. It's my
Okay.
right arm, and it's almost like a little strain in there, I guess, maybe.
Okay.
When I'm up. Yeah.
On the up part.
Yeah.
Do you notice it if you use your legs? Like if you like dip with your legs, like do a push press and you dip with your legs and press, do you notice it then, or do you notice it more if you do just strict, or both?
When I do the press.
Just anything overhead.
When I do the up, yeah. Okay. When I do it just a regular push, it doesn't hurt as much. But I do notice it does when I do the fast one, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called.
Okay. Yeah, the push press. Okay, that's good. That's good to know. I have some things that we can go over for why that happens, and what you can do ahead of time to kind of mitigate that.
Okay. And then that I feel it too when I do my push-ups, of course, because it's in the shoulder. So I don't know if it's an injury that I have, or if I'm just doing one of the exercises wrong and it's kind of hurting the whole time. You know what I mean?
My first thought is that that shoulder is probably tight and the muscles in there are restricting movement. And so when you force it to go into a position it doesn't really want to go into, you're feeling pain or pinching. So my guess is there needs to be some mobility, or maybe some like a better warm-up prior to doing those movements. And so I can go over some different things with you. If you're not on next week, I'll still cover it, and then you can always go back and watch the recording. But I'll give you some tips for overhead, because I've had that issue too. So I don't.
And it's just in one arm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay. Is there any other movements that you guys have questions about that you're like, I do these movements, but it doesn't feel right, or I don't feel like the muscles are working? For me, it was whenever I did bent over rows. So if you bend over and you do the rows, for the longest time, I had a hard time trying to figure out what muscle was supposed to be working, because I couldn't feel nothing. So that's one I could go over too. Because some of you will see that in your strength training program. Nicole, I think I may have programmed you some bent over rows, but those for me were hard to figure out what muscles was supposed to be working.
I don't do any squats or lunges because I have knee issues. So I'm working on things that will help build strength in my knee.
Okay, good. I can give you some tips, Julie. Unless you're working with somebody and you already have a program, then great. I don't want to mess with that. But if you're...
No, I don't have a program at all.
Have you ever had any knee injuries?
Yeah, I hit my knee when I was 16 and on a guardrail, and spent 8 weeks in a knee immobilizer. So yeah, it was pretty intense. And I've had issues with my knee ever since, trying to go out of place if I move it the wrong way. So I'm trying to work on getting some kind of exercise routine down to deal with those muscles in the knee to help keep my kneecap where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all. There's a couple that you can try that I can demonstrate and show you. That is not just around the knee, but it's kind of like downstream and upstream. So like your shin muscles, your calf muscles, and then your quads, and because all of those kind of connect, they connect at the knee. So kind of strengthen all around is ideal to kind of help with knee things, but I can give you some things to try.
That would be great. Sorry, I'm trying to start prepping dinner, and the grandson's over and the daughter's asleep.
Okay.
A lot going on here right now.
I'll make a note of that, so that way we have things to cover on on our next call. But if you guys think of any other movements that you're like, curious about, just let me know. And you can shoot me a Marco Polo, or next time we're on this call, you can bring it up and then we can chat about it. So, because I'd like to do more education around movement. I think a lot of times we just go through the range of motion that we think we're doing, but maybe we're not doing it properly. Or I don't know, we're afraid of injuring, so we don't go as heavy as we probably could. So, which is okay. But I love the education part. So I don't mind educating if there's anything you guys want more information on. But all right, ladies. Well, thanks for hopping on. And I hope you ladies have a good evening. And I will chat with you next week, and have a good week.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Bye.
You too.
So.